All right. Hello, everyone. As you're coming in, welcome to our first in our three-part series on 988. My name is Emily Moore. I'm representing the Southeast Mental Health Technology Transfer Center, and I am very happy to be here today moderating this webinar in collaboration with the Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network, our longtime friends and partners. And without any ado whatsoever, I just wanted to welcome everybody to today's event. I'm going to go ahead and turn it right over to Chris Johnson so he can kick off today's webinar.
All right, thank you so much, Emily. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Chris Johnson, and I am the Director of Communications for the Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network, and I am a person in long-term recovery. What that means for me is that today I get to lead a full, productive, and rewarding life where my mental health challenges do not serve as barriers to me living the life I want to live. And I've been able to live this life since 2008. It's a good life, and I'm glad to be here with you today. I am joined by a few of my colleagues. Before I get started, though, I just want to make sure you all are aware that there are two more episodes, webinars in the series, and Mark.
I think you froze on us. Hello, everybody. I am Heather James. I'm the Chief Training and Development Officer for Georgia Mental Health Consumer Networks. I will pick up where Chris left off. I'm talking about there are two more webinars in this series. Our second one will be April 15th at 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. And it will be still 988, and it is, the people who show. And then the third one will be April 29th, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. And it's the places that we go. As Chris stated, that he's a person in long-term recovery. I too am a person that is in long-term recovery, and it has been about over 7 years since I began my recovery journey. And so what that means to me is that I no longer have to hide behind a mask of shame or guilt because of my mental health challenges or diagnosis. I'm free to be my true, authentic self. I show up. I am a great friend, employee, coworker, and my most proud accomplishment, because I do not have kids, are my nieces that I are very near and dear to my heart, that love to call me their auntie mommy. And I see that Chris is back with us.
Where did it cut me off?
About the dates, but I filled in the dates for you.
Awesome, thank you.
You're
okay, so let's get. Carly, would you like to get started with your brief introduction? Just your name, your organization, the role your organization plays in the 988 system, and the role you play.
Okay, well, hey, my name is Carly Bird, and I work for the Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network as the director of the Peer Support Wellness and Respite Center in White County. I forgot the other questions you asked me. Oh, what role we play in 988? Well, one of the services that the Peer Support Respite Centers provide is the warmline, which is peer support over the phone in a gist. And what we've always done in partnership with the crisis line that's ringing or 988 is that if somebody in crisis that called 988 doesn't meet the criteria of crisis, then they can transfer to us, where we will provide support, and vice versa. If somebody's needs are greater than what we can provide on the warm line, then we can transfer to them.
Okay. How about Ms. Quarles? Would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself? It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. Hey, everybody. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for the invite. I am Joy Quarles. I am a director with the City of Atlanta. I am over the supportive services team. The supportive services team take calls from customers, constituents in the city in reference to I'm sorry, I got a brain fog. In reference to supportive services needs. It could be mental illness, it can be homelessness, and we do refer a lot of calls to 988 as well. But that's how we work in this role. We we also give referrals to PAD, which is Police and Alternative Diversion Initiative. So if someone calls in and they are saying that they need assistance, and we don't want to get them, they don't want to get they need assistance for something they can be locked up for. So for they're having a mental health episode, they are yelling in public, they are walking down the street unclothed, then we can call PAD, and PAD will be with them within 30 minutes of the call and provide assistance on the spot. So we work with a lot of different organizations, but we definitely work hand in hand with PAD. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. And for those of you who aren't in Atlanta who wonder if it really works, it does, because I went to the 311 website when there was a mattress blocking my sidewalk for weeks, and like 2 days later it was gone. It was amazing. So anyway, finally we have Miss Dawn Peel. Dawn, thank you so much. You are the only person who, for the past 2 years while I was doing interim and interim director, communications director at the network, you were the only person I knew who was busier than I was, getting all of the 988 stuff rolled out. So just, and I know you're still busy. I thought you would slow down after it got rolled out, but it doesn't seem like you have. So thank you so much for taking time to be with us today.
Yes, thank you for having me. So my name is Dawn Peel. I'm the director for the Office of Crisis Coordination for the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. And the role that our organization plays with 988 is as the Behavioral Health Authority for the state of Georgia. We've been responsible for overseeing the rollout and implementation of 988. So that has included, contracting with different providers to do the work across the 3 different domains, as I mentioned earlier, as well as helping to guide some of the strategic planning, both with internal partners and then making sure that we have external partners like our good friends at Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network and others at the table to help us understand that there's what they're seeing in the community and what their needs are. In Georgia, we are very, very fortunate to have a long history of peer support services. In fact, just the end of last week, on the last day of our legislative cycle, peer services were recognized as having been in place for 25 years in the state of Georgia. So that's a big deal. And I know some of the people that were on the call here today from Georgia were able to be part of that. And so it's wonderful to be a part of a group that's been doing this work for so long, and understanding that peers in Georgia are embedded and are valuable partners across our crisis system. So the folks that have spoken already have talked about our peer warm lines, but our 988 call center that's called the Georgia Crisis Nexus line also has peers that work there. Our mobile crisis teams do, and our crisis centers as well. So we truly believe in the really important experience that peers bring to the table, and are just so grateful to be in partnership with them to have them help us support our crisis network. So Chris, turn it back over to you.
Thank you. And I guess that was a good brief overview, right? Yeah. Yeah, I feel like if I knew nothing about 988, I would know enough now to carry on with this webinar. So thank you for that, Dawn. Dawn got put on the spot today because there was a little miscommunication with our partners at GCAL. They're going to be on our next 2 calls, and hopefully including Gene Olszewski, who is the Director of Recovery for Anthem, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Carillon, whatever their name is now. And she's fantastic and a great advocate for all of us who are certified peer specialists and people living in recovery. But we like to start everything we do at the network with a strengths-based, hope-based approach. So we're going to ask you all to tell me what you like or love, if you love.
So he froze again, so I will complete that question. So as Chris said, talking about strengths-based, now what is it that you like or love the most about working, about the work you do in supporting callers seeking telephone support? We can start off with Joy.
I knew you was gonna call on me. The thing I like the most is helping people. I really love to be a assistance for others in the need of help. So that's what I love the most about my job, being able to lead a team that can help people. And did you have a two-part question to that? I'm sorry.
No, it was just what did you like or love the most about the work you do supporting callers seeking telecom sports? You got it answered.
Thank you.
No, thank you. What about you, Carly?
I like that Chris froze in a happy face before he disappeared. That was great. Anyway, I love the warm line. I think in supporting people over the phone, I think there's a huge outreach piece to it that I don't have just sitting here, because I meet people all across the state, right? Like I meet people over the phone that I would never meet just walking down the street, or that would just walk through the door, more than likely. So that's amazing that there's that outreach there. And then we can grow like our community that way. Like, maybe I'm talking to somebody for, a year or two, and they live, I don't know, 5 hours away, and then, they move up here. So you never know the connections, that you can make, or the resources that you can provide them. And also there's some power in the anonymity piece of it, because, our callers, we don't, require them to say, give me your social security number, give me your address right now. So I think people are more likely to reach out over the phone, as opposed to having to go out in person. It can be, daunting, if you were to go out to seek support or, help in a different setting. And so I think it's really powerful that we're able to offer support over the phone in that way.
Great, thank you. Welcome back, Chris.
Thanks. Google Fiber has never given out on me before, but today's the day. Today's the day. Joy, you want to go ahead? What do you love?
Oh, I already
went,
went.
Joy.
Oh, you went? Okay, I missed that. I'll watch the tape. How about Dawn? Did you go? No, Dawn, what do you love?
So there's so much that I love about this work, but I really love being able to be part of the solution, right? That there's so much need out there, and having the opportunity to sit in the role that I am at this monumental time in behavioral health and all the changes that are happening. It's a real honor to be a part of this work. But I think in particular, I love having an opportunity to find out, like, from other national experts what's going on for them and what works for them, and then talking with folks that literally do this life-saving work every day. I've done crisis work. It's been about 13 years, and so I know what I know, but I don't know what I don't know. So making sure that I love that partnership and the collaboration that we can have to really make these services useful for those that need it, oftentimes on some of their worst days.
Yeah. So many of us are defined by the worst moment of our lives, and it just stays with us. So yeah, healing from that is so important and sometimes so rare. So anyway, thank you, Dawn. Heather, did you want to respond to that question just for kicks? No? You good?
No, it's fine. So for me, I think one of the things I enjoy and I love the most about when I'm able to support my peers is, I think, Carly touched base on it. It's that connection piece. Because I think for so many of individuals living with mental health diagnoses or substance use, like we felt like we were alone. Nobody else really could understand us. And so I know just for myself, being able to be partnered up with, somebody who provides CPS, like provides peer support, a certified peer specialist, it was a game changer for me. So being able to continue to offer support and hope to other people is one of the greatest parts of the job that I enjoy. And then seeing them transition and evolve within their recovery journey is it's an amazing experience. It's very breathtaking.
I was gonna say, for me, it's when someone that I'm working with trust me for the first time enough to take a risk. You know, just that building that piece, and they make that decision, like, I'm going to take this risk now and share something that they hadn't shared before, do something they hadn't done before. So I love that part. Now, what is a typical day like for you personally? Let's see. Joy, why don't we start with you? Well, what's a day like in the customer service department of the city of Atlanta?
A day is like you're receiving different kind of calls for assistance for supportive services needs. We also receive 911 calls dealing with mental illness. So that's something that we launched about a year ago. So we don't want the police involved. And if it's a mental health episode, so we are now getting calls directly from 911 and they'll transfer it to us. So we're dealing with different type of situations, different type of calls, trying to assist the person that's having the situation that they're dealing with.
Okay. Awesome. Now, I don't remember, but when did you first learn about peer support? I mean, I know when I met you, you'd already been working with PAD, so you knew all about it. But when did you first learn about it, like in your professional or personal capacity? Like, how did you come to know it?
So I learned about it. So I was the creator of the supportive services team for the city of Atlanta. And I just thought it was a need because we was receiving calls where people were saying, I want to commit suicide and I just want to talk, we was getting those type of calls and we didn't know how to handle them. And Moki Pad turned me over to you, and we got training from your team, from you. And that's how I learned about it. And I had no clue of that line before I met you. So I'm grateful because you guys train us. You get my agents trained, and now we're able to pass calls on your way as well that we can't handle.
Okay, cool. All right, thank you. Dawn, what's the life like in the day of dawn?
Well, every day is different, just kind of like it is for the folks that do crisis work, directly. You never quite know what to expect. There's a lot of course, meetings and stuff, but I'm thinking back to some of the work that I did in crisis when I was doing direct services, and it's just being prepared for whatever might come, which is really stimulating and exciting in some ways, and sometimes very tiring in others, because sometimes you weren't quite expecting a heavy day and now you have a very heavy day because of what's come up. But I think when we think of behavioral health crisis work, it's very unique because it's, again, as we said, we're helping people when they need it the most. It's not your run-of-the-mill that somebody's walking in for an intake or something like that you're actually getting the opportunity to be there to support the person and to help get them to the next appropriate group, whether it's an outpatient provider or connected to a higher level of crisis services. So just lots of great opportunities to help people. And of course, mine is several steps back from that these days. But I still love, being part of this and being able to feel like I'm making a difference.
That's great. So then you started out as a direct service provider, not as sort of an MBA management type person, right?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, I've been in the field for almost 30 years, and just really the last 13 have been doing administration. So I've done a lot of crisis work. And Chris, when you asked Joy the question about when she first became acquainted with peers, it made me think of my first experience with that. So I moved to Georgia in 2001 and was working in a day services program. And that was, we had a peer group program that was next door. And it was amazing because I'd not heard of this before. And I was much younger back then and really energetic, and thought, what a great way to reach people. So I think I came in earlier in the infancy of the peer services here in Georgia, but it's been quite a pleasure to watch it grow over the years.
That's awesome. Right place at the right time, for sure. Okay, and Carly, what's the day like for you?
A lot of multitasking. Yeah, all the time. But as it relates specifically to providing support over the phone, it's a variety. It's, you know, it's answering the phone when it rings, it's returning calls, it's leaving voicemails, it's playing phone tag. It's, you know, sometimes it's talking to brand new callers. Sometimes it's people, you know, that are struggling, dealing with, you know, more particularly challenging day than others. Sometimes it's providing resources. Sometimes it's, you know, and then we have a lot of regular callers that we get to know, you know, over a period of time, and that's amazing, you know, and they're letting us know, like, hey, my dog was sick, you know, and now it's better, you know, whatever. And so it's beautiful that, you know, we get to build relationships in that way. And the call volume increases depending on what's going on and you know what day it is. Like if it's a holiday, nonstop. And that can be, you know, a positive or negative experience. If there's some sort of crisis going on in the world, like I don't know, a hurricane or something like that, or if it's an election year, those are phone always rings more with something like that. So it just depends on what's going on and how people are feeling. So that's how my day fluctuates.
Well, and that leads us to our next question that I was going to ask about, just like your call volume, like you personally, like how many calls on average would you say you answer a day, or your center answers a day, or your employer answers a day? Like how many calls come through the network?
So I know for me on an average day, if I'm working during the day, I can have, you know, if it's a slower day, I might have like 7, or I've had 23.
Wow.
Just like in an 8-hour period. It just depends on what it is. Like I said, with those variables. And on average, a daily in a 24-hour period, you know, our center gets anywhere between 35 to 50.
Seems like a lot of relationships to manage. How about you, Joy? How many calls do y'all get over at 311?
So I knew you was about to ask me that question, so I'll just pull the report. So we get about 1,200. Like last month, we fluctuate between 1,200 and 1,500 calls a month. We have about 6 agents. Well, no, I'm sorry. We have 8 agents. So each agent will receive about between 10 and 15 calls a day.
Okay. And how about you, Ms. Dawn? I guess your organization is the state of Georgia. So how many calls do you get a day?
Oh, Lord, that's a really good question. I get a lot of emails every day. I don't get a whole lot of calls, knock on wood.
Okay.
But as far as our call center goes, just on average, they get 700 to 800 calls a day. But that's not just crisis calls. They also manage our air traffic control, for lack of a better way, like our referral system into other services in our crisis system. So they manage a lot of that, and that's call, text, and chat. But that's not me. That's our call center. That would be unmanageable for one person. So, but certainly some of the call volume that my colleagues have mentioned is pretty significant as well.
All right. So I was wondering about, since 988 started last year, it's been now what, 14 months? Longer. 18 months?
Yeah, July of 22 was when it rolled out.
Okay, so well, we're coming up on 2 years, really, which doesn't seem possible. But during that time, and I guess since you're on, why don't you go ahead if you wouldn't answer? Like, has there been any change in the nature of the calls that like GCal gets, or like I mean, I envision that people who like me, who never knew about any of these services before I started doing this work, that people who became more aware would like maybe change what was happening in the call centers. But has that happened at all? Have the demographics or anything changed of the people calling in?
So it's interesting that you asked that. Since 988 has rolled out, the Georgia Crisis and Access Line has actually received fewer calls a day, which seems unlikely, right? Based on what you would expect. But it's the same amount of people. It's just that they're not having to call quite as often. So like if it's somebody that's calling for a crisis bed or something like that, we've put efficiencies in place. And we did that very intentionally, knowing that the volume would increase. The number of calls that are coming in from 988 has gone up several percent since like this time last year. The other thing that I'll say is that we're seeing a lot of people from rural Georgia, like per capita. We're seeing a lot more people that are calling from rural areas than urban areas. And we think that's interesting because, I mean, if you've ever lived in a rural area and you need help for something like a mental health condition, there might be one clinic in town and the town might be very small. So people might prefer the anonymity. I think Carly had mentioned that, the anonymity of reaching out over the phone, that you don't have to say who you are, where you are. You can just call and get help. And then we've also got a lot of young people that are calling in, or particularly with our text and chat. We're seeing a lot of young people that use that feature. And again, you know, I think that's just some of the changes that have shifted with generations. I'm a parent. My child would prefer to text any day over than talking to me on the phone. So we're very happy that young people have that option for 988 to use text or chat. But those are the two main demographic shifts that we've noticed. But we continue to keep track of that.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Joy, have you guys noticed any change since the 988 rollout? I know that you weren't tied to them, but you still sort of like were ramping up at the same time, I think.
Yeah,
so
I've noticed
much history before 988 went live.
Yeah, the biggest change, we was getting a lot of crisis type calls. Like I said, we was even getting people who was calling in saying that they was going to commit suicide, but they wanted to talk to someone first, and they didn't know about 988. So now we do get fewer calls in relationship to crisis. We still get some, but I have seen a decline since 988 went live.
How about you, Carly? I know initially we saw an uptick in calls at the centers when 988 went live, or when they started advertising. Has that still been the case? Are you still getting more referrals?
Yeah, so our call volume has went up, particularly at night and in the wee hours of the morning. And actually, I'm not entirely sure how this part is happening. I've noticed an increase of out-of-state calls. And they say that they're transferred, and I don't know how that happens, but I have noticed that, and our calls have went up, which is nice, you know, that we're able to provide more resources to more people that didn't know about it. And I think it's good too, because now people don't have to, it's good, they can remember a 3-digit number.
Right. It is good to be able to remember a 3-digit number, and I can do it, which very pleased that, you know, at this time in my life, I can still remember things. Has there been, I guess we already went through that. Has there been any change in your workplace? I mean, like, have you noticed, has the nature of your role changed for any of you, Joy?
Yeah, I try to make alliances with a lot of different organizations. So for instance, we're even within our city department, like 911. So I try to take the burden off some departments or some organizations and tell them to come here. So for example, the 911 calls, if it's for public indecency, or if it's for drug use in public, if they call 911, they'll get to us. Homelessness, they can call us and we can get a shelter bed, or, you know, so those are the different things that we didn't start off with that I'm making sure that we do now, that my team does now. And even it was when I think it was done, even when she said the chat bot. So that's something that we're going to try to do in the future, because it is like most, you know, teenagers, they like to text instead of talking. So that's something that I'm in the works with, trying to do with a chat feature and social media feature as well, to have a team respond through social media as well as on the chat bot, or not chat bot, but to text and chat.
All right, Dawn, I'm sure your life has changed in ways we can't imagine, but how overall is has the nature of the work on a daily basis changed a lot? for you?
Well, it's interesting because we were preparing for 988 for like 18 months before it rolled out. So when I stepped into this role in January of 22, like it was getting ready for 988 to roll out. It has changed to some degree because we thought we were going to have like certain things happen when 988 rolled out. Like we expected call volume to double. And as I said earlier, it hasn't, thank goodness, because I don't know, we'd struggle to handle double the call volume. But certainly, you know, there's had to be a lot of flexibility because as the system continues to evolve, as we continue to market and really ramp up marketing of 988, we've got to be prepared for people that maybe have never ever used this service before to be reaching out. And so to be receptive to their needs, it might be a referral to an outpatient provider, it might be a referral to a higher level of care in crisis, but it might be factors that are impacted by social determinants of health. And so making sure that we can connect people to community resources like food banks and, you know, Joy had mentioned housing insecurity and things like that, things that might impact a person being in a crisis or not. So we're just having to be flexible and like all of us that work in this field, just be able to pivot pretty quickly to be able to bring the resources to bear as they're needed.
Thank you. Anyone else? Carly?
I think we certainly have to, since 988 is rolled out, but I think just in general with the state of the world, we really got to be like on top of our resources. You know, like the homelessness population goes up, or you know, the suicide rate, or the overdose, you know, whatever, just because that's, you know, that's the world right now, I guess. So we got to be on top of that and making sure that our resources are up to date, because that's one of the worst things, right? When you give somebody resources, sorry, this number is no longer in service. So just being mindful of that and being open to what's in the community and not even what's in my community, but what's like, you know, in the next counties, you know, being aware of what's everywhere. Because, you know, I could get a caller from, I don't know, Savannah or whatever, and maybe I can find something there. Thank God for the power of people. So yeah, definitely gotta be on top of that. And because we tend to get, you know, more calls, you know, that are 988 oriented, just being prepared. You know, you never know what you're gonna get, but just being prepared to support somebody no matter where they're at.
Right. Yeah, peer support is great. Real answers to tough questions like how do I get housing in Cordeal? You know, that's even better sometimes. So
Yeah.
that's a statewide resource that all of us could rely on for having great information. I don't know of any state that has that. I know some that say they do, but when you talk to the folks, like there are usually kinks in those systems that makes me scared of them. But yeah, that would be great. How about you, Joy?
What was the question, Chris? I thought I just answered. I'm sorry. What was it?
Oh, okay. The question about has there been any change in your workplace?
Yeah, so that was the question I answered. Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. I just want to
Me on
circle
my
back.
toes.
Yeah, the questions are sort of piling on top of each other. But before we get to the next round of questions, I heard that there were some questions in the chat, and I don't have my glasses. I have no idea where they are. So I'm going to have to ask someone else to please check out the chat for us.
Yeah, I got you, Chris.
Thank you, Heather.
Yeah, so we have there's one question and it asked about, you know, how do you define a crisis call? They'll go with Don, you know, when dealing with 988, how is 988 defining crisis calls?
So we think it's important for the individual to define what a crisis is for them, right? We don't want to say, don't call about this or that, but definitely call about something else. We just encourage people to call if they're experiencing a crisis. And the way that we're marketing that or educating people about that is, are you experiencing emotional distress? Are you overwhelmed? Or are you experiencing symptoms of a mental health condition or suicidality or things like that? Because if a person needs help, they need help. And if what they really need is just a person to talk to, that's fine. We can help them get that assistance. We can get them linked up to some of the resources that that we talked about, like outpatient services or something like that. Or the call center can dispatch a mobile crisis team if that's what's needed, or make a referral to a crisis center. And I think as we move forward, that's still the way that we plan to move forward. Is just that let's let people identify for them what's a crisis, and then we'll take it from there and figure out the best way to help them.
Thank you. And what about you, Carly, on the peer side? How is it that when it's individuals calling on the warm line, how are you guys defining a crisis, or what parameters are you putting in place where you realize this call is beyond, our expertise as peer specialists, and we need to hand it off to 988?
So, a crisis can mean so many different things. There's so many different people, and we're all about, absolutely meeting people where they're at and trying to support them no matter what that looks like. And, we're all about connecting any way that we can. Where we may not, where we may not be able to meet their needs is where, they might be, actively in danger or in harm in some way. And that's where, that we could transfer over to 988. But, most otherwise we can talk about anything.
Yeah. And what about you, Joy, with the calls that you guys are receiving? How is your agency defining crisis calls, and how are you, organizing that, or, by the different levels of like, what is it that you can handle, what needs to be handed off to a peer-to-peer warm line, and what needs to go to a 988 crisis line?
So we try to let the public know that we handle non-emergency calls for supportive services type, but we do get calls where it's a crisis. So we use something called KAs, which are knowledge articles. We want to make sure that our agents are giving the right information for the different type of calls that come in to the supportive services line. So it's pretty much a knowledge article deals with keywords. So if the person who's calling says that they're having a keyword search, and the agent will put that keyword in, and it'll pull up an article, and it tells the agent exactly what to do. Pass this off to 988, give it to it might be a 911 type call. And that's how we would know if it's dealing with certain things as beyond our realm. We don't want to say, okay, sorry, we can't help you, but we definitely will give the information. And that's why it's very important to connect with a lot of organizations. So we'll have more than one that we can provide support, that we can give the customer support to.
Thank you. And the last question that was posted in our Q&A box, it says, what protocols do you use to intervene in crisis? So I know there were a couple that were kind of already touched based on. Joy, you talked about those keywords in the knowledge article, and Don, you talked about like a crisis response team. But is there any other protocols that are being put in place to use during those to intervene in crisis? Go with you, Carly. What do those protocols look like on the peer side, on the peer-to-peer warm line?
So if somebody's in crisis when they're on the warm line specifically?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, like the protocols that you have in place to intervene.
Yeah, and so, if somebody's in crisis and I can't, meet their needs, first of all, it's not a secret. I'm not gonna, it's not gonna be a secret that they get transferred and they don't know about it, because that's upsetting, that's scary, that's alarming to all of a sudden be transferred and you don't know what's going on, especially when you're already in a state of upset, right? So I let them know, like, I'm concerned, here's why. I think that we should, transfer over here so that they can better support you in that situation. I let them know that it's happening, we put them on hold, transfer the call, and then stay on the phone with them until they are connected to make sure that everything goes through.
Thank you. And Don, on the 988 side or GCAL, so outside of dispatching some of those for crisis response team, are there other protocols that are put in place to help individuals and who are calling that are in crisis, as far as like the protocols when intervening?
Yeah, so GCAL has done a really great job over the years of putting together very effective training for their staff to use, so that, no matter who answers the call, they're trained to identify quickly what's going on, to de-escalate the individual, and then to help identify the next appropriate level of care. They also have fail safes in place so that if the person that answers the phone has questions, then excuse me, there are other staff that they can work with to have that person, consult and offer their feedback as well. And then GCAL has put together some like matrices for next steps. So kind of like an, if this happens, then we recommend this is the next step, or if something else happens, then it should be this type of a response. So for the triaging of calls for whether it goes to outpatient, mobile, or referral to a crisis bed.
Thank you so much. And Joy, outside of you said the keyword search of those knowledge articles, are there other protocols that 301 has in place?
Yeah, training. We take training from 911, we take training from GCAL, we take training from all the different organizations. So when we do get the call, we don't freeze up. We can de-escalate if needed and then try to transfer it to another agency. But training is definitely key. And I that my team, I make them do the training over and over, because if you do it just one time when you first start, they're gonna freeze up and not remember. So I make them do a certain amount of hours of training every quarter. And even if it's the same training with Chris, hey, every quarter we're training.
Well, and you're getting those keywords down.
Yeah. And this isn't a question from the chat, but this is just my follow-up question, because you did mention all the training and I'm not wanting them to freeze on the call. So do you guys do any of those like practice calls, like where they don't know they're getting a practice call, just to see how that?
Absolutely. We do mock call training as well. So we do it in-house and we do different mock calls, especially when they're new, and we want to shoot out every scenario that we can. So they'll be equipped, and we let them listen to calls, because all of our calls are recorded. So we also let them listen to calls as well that they didn't take, that somebody else did, so they can be prepared if they get something like that as well.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, all the questions that we have in our chat as of now. Chris, back to you.
Okay. Thank you. So we're going to jump back over here, and I think we're doing okay on time. But
wait, it is another question. So it's look like it's questions in the chat and in the Q&A box.
Let's see. There's a question on self-care. I'm going to skip that for right now, just because I know that is a question that Chris is going to ask. Unless you want to do it right now, Chris, it's up to you.
Okay, yeah, we can go ahead and do that right now. And you can tell me, Joy, if the question answers the question. Self-care is important for everyone who answers these types of calls. And I want to know, what do you do to take care of yourself if you answer those calls? What do you encourage your staff to do, your colleagues to do if to take care of themselves? But most importantly, just how do you take care of you? I would like to hear.
Most people don't want to know about what we do for self-care. So that's a great question. Whoever asked that question, so great question. I encourage my team to take time off. I think that you can get burnt off by working every day all the time. And so I encourage my team, and I think I'm the first director who encourages them to take off. I'm like, take off if you have the time, which they always have, take off. I don't care if it's a week, I don't care if you need 2 weeks. But I tell them at least take once a month off as a self-care day. Once a month, at least take off. I love the fact that you work hard and you want to come in every day, but the type of calls that you guys take it can be draining sometimes. So I recommend that they take once a month off. I try to do that myself. And when I do it, I actually get a massage. So I try to make sure I get sometimes a 90-minute massage once a month.
Okay. Jeju, if you haven't been to Jeju, go to Jeju. All right. Dawn, how about you? What does your self-care look like?
So I think I need to be doing joy self-care because that sounds amazing.
Right.
But I agree with taking time off, and schedules are busy, but there's usually nothing in your schedule that somebody else couldn't do for you. So just giving yourself the grace to take that time off and do whatever it is that makes you happy. If you enjoy being outside, I do enjoy, being outside gardening. I actually have a self-care day coming up next Monday. I'm going to take the day off and take my son and his friends to go see the eclipse and
Oh,
see
nice.
what there is to see with that. So it can differ, reading books, playing with my pets, spending time with family. It really just kind of depends on where I'm at and what's available. But it's okay to do it, even if you've got a really busy schedule. Because again, to Joy's point, if you don't do it, nobody's going to look after you to make sure you're taking care of yourself, and then you're just not as efficient for yourself and your life and others.
Awesome. Thank you. Carly, what do you do?
So I think self-care is so vital in general, but particularly when it involves providing support over the phone, because sometimes it can just be so heavy, right? You never know what you're gonna feel, and those, and your heart goes out, and sometimes you're gonna cry, you're angry, like you never know what you're gonna hear. And there's a lot of pressure, I think, because you wanna help, you wanna do the right thing, you wanna say the right thing, but the truth is we don't have the right answer to everything or anything really. We're just supporting people where they're at, and we're listening, and we're validating, and we're empathizing. But there's a lot of pressure there. So like she was saying, giving grace and taking time to breathe and say, this is not on me, and whatever whatever I need to do to say I did the best I could, and that's okay. Because I know I did the best I could, because right, I offered resources. I, did what I was supposed to do based on what I was trained to do. And sometimes, I gotta walk around in circles outside, maybe yell a little bit, whatever it is. But it's so important, and it can be heavy. And so I sometimes, when I walk out this door, I'm like, okay, everything that I just walked through the door frame, I'm leaving it here. I'll be back tomorrow. Okay, because I gotta really have that separation with myself, and also being mindful that listening to other people's experiences, traumas, crisis, whatever. I don't bring that into myself. I don't pull into my own experiences in that negative way. So just being careful, meditating, praying, journaling, whatever it is I gotta do, all the above, whatever it takes.
Okay. Thank you, Carly. We are running a little short of time, but if you all have any a story to inspire us as we move into the world of life after this webinar, what can you share? My only inspiring story is really sad and a little long, so I'm not going to go into it, but I can tell you, I was a security guard at the University of Georgia, and there was a really tragic event, like truly tragic. And it happened over the Christmas holidays, and I was the security guard, but the police department, and I listened to it happen in real time over my little walkie-talkie thing at the Butts Mayor building. And, it didn't just impact me because I had experienced something similar in the past. It impacted everyone who was listening on the calls, just listening, not even seeing, not knowing who the people were. And that's one of the reasons I still do this work, because I saw everyone, the police officers, everyone responding in this really human way and helping each other. In that moment, it was like a Mr. Rogers moment for us, the police force, because we could be there for each other. It was great. And I think about that a lot when I hear about some of the calls that we get in at the center and at other places. And it keeps me motivated to come back. Joy, is there a call particular call for you that stands out? Something that you heard, something that you did?
Yeah, we had a lady who called who was just riding a MARTA bus. And at the end of the day, the driver let her get on the bus that morning, and she stayed on all day long, and that's not supposed to be MARTA's protocol. And he just sympathized and didn't know what to say, so he called 311. He didn't know what to say or do, so he called us. And it was during COVID. She had no one to go to. She had mental health challenges, and she just didn't know, and substance abuse challenges, and she just didn't know where to go to, where to turn. She had nowhere to go. It was just her and her dog, and she didn't know what to do. And we was able to talk to her and get her, talk to her family. We asked for her family, and they lived in another state. And they said they was actually missing her. They didn't know what happened. She had been gone for months. They did a missing person alert. And we ended up getting her a bus ticket to be reunited with her family, who she thought didn't want her because of her substance abuse issues. And they actually had a missing persons report for months, didn't know where she was at. And so that was one of the stories that I say all the time. That's one of my biggest stories.
That's fantastic. How about you, Carly?
You know, I really don't want to sound like a Hallmark card or anything like that, but like, but like all of the calls, like they're so special in their own way. Like they really are. But so I can't pick one, but I think the most amazing thing about it that I found is that the smallest things like make the biggest connections. You know, you might be trying to connect with a peer and you're like hitting so many walls, like we don't come from the same area, we didn't grow up this way, we're different ages, you know, I'm different gender, whatever, like you're just hitting all these walls. And it's like, you had a goldfish named Bubbles, you know, or your favorite color is purple, or you love Fran Drescher. I mean, it can just be any small thing. And then you start to build that connection and find that hope and build that relationship. And somebody that, you know, something so small, you know, can come from a dark place. And then over time, you get to watch this transformation. And it's just so amazing. And that's really how most all of it is. And that's just my favorite part.
Thanks, Carly. How about you, Dawn? Do you have anything that you rely on for hope each day?
Well, I'm going to do what might sound like a shameless plug here, but I think some of the recovery stories that we hear when we work with like y'all at Georgia Consumer Mental Health Network, with the Respect Institute, that's what really keeps me going, because being in the role that I'm in, I don't get the day-to-day contact with people anymore, but knowing that services to help people is really important. I mean, I'm still a counselor at heart, even though I don't do it anymore. So having that information out there is really inspiring. And I know that y'all have partnered with the department and some others to record some of the recovery stories. We've got some of them on our 988ga.org website. So it's those types of things that really make it worth it for me. It's just knowing that maybe some small part of what I did has made a difference in someone's life.
Thanks so much, Dawn. And Heather, you have anything you want to throw in here?
For my inspiring or hopeful story, I think one that I have that I can really kind of comes to mind is when I was doing direct services with the Kaiser Project, and I had an individual, and after working with them, you know, like I said, just seeing their transition and their growth and their recovery story was amazing, to the point that you know, they were creating their own little tools to use to help with their self-care. They were creating like a little tracker to help manage, you know, some of the symptoms so they could really be on top of it. This is a person who's also part of the LGBTQIA community, and they became even more comfortable just in their own skin, being their true authentic self, to the point that they were ready to actually apply to be a certified peer specialist. And so to me, that was just really awesome to just watch that whole transition. That's one of the things that just keeps me going in this field, seeing those journeys.
Thanks, that's awesome, Heather. Thank you all for being here and for helping us get this 988 conversation going. Next time, we're going to be talking with the people who show up when you call a crisis line or 988 and someone needs to come out to see you. Who comes? What do they do? What do they say? Where do they go? We will find out next time. If you came here today in hopes of getting continuing education credit, please know that you must fill out the evaluation of this webinar, which the link is going to be coming soon from our friend Emily, who's going to be popping in. But until you
Dropped
guys,
in
so
the
you
chat.
don't go away. Is it in the chat?
Yep,
Okay.
she's dropped it in the chat.
Awesome.
Yep, it's in the chat, and as well as, just in case, the registration link for the next session that you were just talking about, Chris, that's also in the chat in case folks want to register already.
Okay. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Dawn, Joy, Carly. Thank you for your time. Heather, thank you for partnering with me in this work. And everyone, go have a great rest of your week. We're going to try to do it here too.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
enjoy this amazing weather.
Thank you, everybody.